Oh, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Clean and Green Committee. Could I ask everyone to note the fire safety instruction that on hearing the alarm you should leave the chamber via the double doors at the back, exit the building through the main entrance and congregate in the car park with an umbrella. Also, please switch off your mobile phones and turn any other electronic devices being used to silent. I'd like to remind everyone present this meeting is subject to an internet webcast recording where proceedings are capable of repeated viewing. If you are seated in the public area of the council chamber, it's likely that your image will be captured by the recording cameras and result in your image becoming part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should leave the public seating area of the council chamber and move to the upper public gallery. If members are for any reason not present for the whole debate on an item, you should consider and seek advice as necessary on whether it would be appropriate for you to vote on that item. And may I remind members to declare any interest when this item is raised on the agenda. Ms White, have we received any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillor Naylor and Aspinall, Councillor Scorton and mine are substituting this evening.
Are there any declarations of interest to be made at this stage? No, can't see anyone. Item 3 then is minutes of the previous Clean and Green Committee held on the 17th of November 2025. They begin on page 5 and Appendix A, which lists the actions from the previous meeting. And that begins on page 11 of the agenda. Is it agreed that I sign these minutes as a true record for the meeting? Yep. Anything arising from them?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank the officers for the response I got on the email on the 4th. I just really want to get some clarity on when we can expect the cameras to be on Church Lane. From the information it's in the email, it's funding and stats. I just want to get a clear indication of timelines.
I can provide some further details after the committee, but just to clarify, I think there may be one there already, but I just want to clarify.
Yeah, we're aware that one or two have been deployed in hotspots, but for obvious reasons, we don't want to go around telling people exactly where they are. But we can certainly provide members with that sort of information. So thank you very much, Mr. Houghton. Sorry, cracking on. Chair's update. This is on page 13 of the agenda, and it updates members on work streams under the terms of reference of this committee. I've got a couple of little updates, which I thought I'd share with you before inviting questions. Take them in order when I find the right piece of paper. There we are. Yes, so the rural lanes litter picking. This has started last week. With the tree management works in the avenue, we got the first team out, and this morning I have to say, very gratified that the leader of the council received an email from residents in Doddinghurst Road saying how delighted they were to see the teams out and clearing the litter. So it's fantastic that we've been able to get that started, and we can provide members, Mr. Houghton, can't we, with a list of the roads that are scheduled to be done or when they've been done. I think that's correct, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's my one update on that. So any questions on the chair's updates? Councillor Barber, I think we saw first.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank the officers for the sterling efforts down Doddinghurst Road, which I saw with Councillor Gordon earlier today. Perhaps we ought to hold more clean and green meetings if it can generate that kind of activity. But it's to be welcome.
It's very cynical.
Well, I've I just remember the traffic islands. Couple of things. In your report on page 18, congratulations on picking up the suggested policy from our side in terms of having a single a charge fee for a single item collection charge. Just a bit disappointed that given that the charge for 2 items was 28, that the administration chose to bring in a single item charge of £25. I think if we were to see, to encourage people to use the bulky waste solution to remove things, it should have been much nearer to the £14 per item charge that the 2 item charge equated to. So I just raised that and I would ask that that be recorded in the minutes, please. Couple of other things. On the removal of fly tipping on page 19, 1.3, we did say when there was additional resource allocated to fly tip collection that would allow the council to meet improved SLA targets. And I do see that we've missed it in every quarter this year. And I do see that the officers have kindly appended an SLA target which doesn't actually exist in practice because we have a 3-day working day SLA target to show where we are in relation to that. But it is really disappointing that given that extra resource that the council approved, that we're not hitting our SLA targets. And the third point, and then I'll finish, is on page 20, where in table 1.5, we have a woeful number of prosecutions. Now, every time I ask this question in ordinary council and also on this committee, I'm told that there's a big prosecution pending that will significantly help to clear up criminal fly tipping, commercial fly tipping. But realistically, 1 prosecution during that period is inadequate. And so I'm very, very disappointed, to be honest with you. I really can't vote for this item, so I'll be voting against.
I don't think it's actually for voting, Councillor Barbara. It's an update, but thank you for your point. I'll collect anyone else's points and then we'll get some answers to that. Councillor Minot.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Barber's items questions all relate to the next item rather than this particular item. Yeah. On this, yeah. On the chair's report, chair's update. I just wanted to say on the Tetra Pak cartons, I have to say I was personally extremely pleased to see that coming up. Obviously, I'm not normally a member of this committee, so it's interesting to see the activities of this committee. I have an enormous number of Tetra Paks which are stored in my house because at a certain point in the past we got told that you couldn't recycle Tetra Paks anymore, and I thought that's not good enough. I need to hold them until I can get them properly recycled in some way. I would also like to think I'm not the only person in the entire borough who's weird enough to have done that. There may be other people who have used the facilities which are available, because I know you can take them to recycling centres. Unfortunately, I both have the desire to do it and not the car to take me to the locations where you can do it. But so I just wanted to say there's a lot of positivity in this. There's a lot of positive improvements. That particular one, on a personal level, I find very positive. We need to be able to recycle more, and the people who are diligent about sorting stuff out need to have those opportunities, and so we can do it, and it's great to be moving forward.
Thank you very much. And we had Councillor McShane next.
Yeah, thank you. It's not actually on your report at all, but it's something. I was in the High Street today, and where the ruins are, there was loads of people feeding the pigeons. Now, the pigeons make a terrible mess. They carry disease, and you've got to try and clear it. And plus, you know, they're actually ruining the ruins as well. Is it possible to just put a notice there? Please do not feed the pigeons for these reasons.
That's interesting. I think we would have to ask St Thomas's Church about putting a notice up, but I take the point and we can raise it with them. I'm taking the members of the committee first. I've seen your hand. Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. It's very welcome news that Tetra Paks are going to be collected from curbside starting at the end of next month. Can I just ask Mr. Houghton, how is this going to be managed in Brentwood? Thank you.
Mr. Ellis?
Sorry. Yes, it will be collected in with the cans and plastics.
And we do have some publicity planned to make people aware of that. As Councillor Minot said, I know a lot of people have been very, very keen for us to be able to recycle Tetra Paks for some time. And fortunately, the recycling centres now have the machinery and the equipment to do that. Up until recently, there was only one in the whole country, and that was in Halifax. So that's one of the reasons why it's taken so long to bring that to fruition. I think Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm not a member of your committee. Just starting off at the top point, rural lanes litter picking. And I appreciate you've got an email complimenting the council for action. I've got several in my inbox which go back months and months and months complaining about it, particularly down Wild Road and Sandpit Lane. I've recently put it in on the NATS request, but I appreciate that a designated team will have to address that. Tetra Paks, really welcome that. Mentioning no names, but someone I know continues to put Tetra Paks into the residual waste. I couldn't possibly say who, but they continue to do it, and I'm always pulling them out. I've given it away, haven't I? I'm always pulling them out and separating them. But it's the information I'm having to tell people that you can't put these in the recycling. You know, it's going to cost money because it will get rejected, these bags. So really welcome that. I think a bit of education around that is really, really necessary. I think across the whole of Clean and Green, we need to start early, with schools and educate the children first. In regards to the fly tipping thing, I copied you into a bit of casework this morning about some bags, I'd say 20, 30 domestic waste bags in what would be called private area, right on the verge of the public highway and and a business's car park. And there was pigeons and vermin climbing all over it. We must address those areas of fly tipping with the residual waste. And if we do go to bi-weekly collection, that's only going to get worse. I've had 3 missed collections in the last 6 months, and just want to say that the bi-weekly collection, although it's not within this report, just putting it out there, I'm dead against that still. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, a couple of points. I think you appreciate why we had to hold off on litter picking in rural, the rural lanes where there are no pavements, because frankly far too many motorists just drive recklessly. There were a couple of near misses with our teams elsewhere in the country. There'd been a couple of serious accidents, so just for the safety of our own staff, that's why we had to stop. We've now got new systems, new training in place, and that's why we've been able to get going. So I think it's important people understand why there was a hiatus.
If I may, Chair, just come back on that. Whilst we're protecting our officers, we've still got volunteers out there that are endangering their lives on those roads. So, we really need to grasp a nil, get it done, and save the potential lives of our residents that are clearing up the mess that we should be clearing up.
Yeah. So, Councillor, so I respect you're not a member of this committee. We have previously discussed the volunteer litter picking policy, and there is a policy that's currently out for consultation, and we're getting some very good feedback from parish councils and people like the Essex Wildlife Trust who do a lot of that litter picking. And one thing that does say, there is a little sort of safety protocol there. It does say your roads where the speed limit is more than 30 miles an hour and there are no pavements, then they shouldn't be collecting them. So we are trying to help people who volunteer, and we're really grateful for them. Of course we are, and many of us take part in that ourselves. We're trying to give them the advice to keep them safe as well. So I think, Mr. Houghton, you might have an answer on the rubbish that's dumped behind some of the shops.
So in terms of along the back of the high street in particular, we have asked the sort of cleansing operatives to include that within the cleaning schedule with varying degrees of success, shall we say. So we are monitoring that. We have brought that to their attention again. So I think the message we're trying to get across to the operatives is that if it's perceived as a public area, that it should be treated as such. I don't think most of the residents can really decipher where a private land ownership starts and finishes. So if it looks like part of the public realm, we are beginning to expand and encourage that. But it's still a work in progress, but it has been cleaned a couple of times around the back of the high street now. But it's something we're just having to emphasise to officers again a couple of times. But I do take your point. I think I think we just need to take it on because it's as I said, residents don't decipher between where the private and sort of public finishes.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. I've got 5 questions. Soft plastics, where are we with that in recycling terms? Could you
I think that's October 2027, I think, is the target for that. Is that right, Mr. Ellis?
Sorry.
Yes, sorry, Chair, it's April 2027.
Sorry. We've had a water main burst today down on the 128 yet again, and lots and lots of residual muds everywhere. Whose responsibility is that to clean it off the road? Because it's actually gone, it's on the main road, and it's because the roads leading off of it go down, all the water's gone down and the mud's everywhere. So is that something we do, or is that the the contractor person?
Chair? Yep. Yes, that's something we will take a look at. Was it on the 128, did you say, Councillor?
128 is in Tree Little Road and Common Road, and Little Road and Common Road, but they've got some up down there today. The old lady's moaning at me. Oh, right, so that's that. I did a walk around on Wednesday of last week with Dean, all around West Horndon, and there is an issue with our guys actually gaining access to where the bins are kept at the back of the houses, the flats. And I do feel sorry for our guys because they can't get down there because there's a particular person who rents 2 of the garages who always parks there on Friday and has been told many times not to, and our guys can't get in to empty the bins. And then the bins get overflowed, the boys can't get in to do it. It's like there should be something whereby we can go down and tell the tenant of the garages to move his truck politely, to help our guys. I found that, a bit annoying that they're trying to do a good job and they're not allowed to do it because of persons. So that's that one very quickly. The other one is the 127 again. I don't know who is responsible for this, and please forgive me if I've brought this on, shouldn't have done. The 127, the 2 lay-bys, which are really adjacent to the halfway house, either side of the road, there's lots of Lucasade bottles in a polite way of putting it, lots of bottles in the lay-bys, in the grass and everywhere, and they're full up with stuff that looks like Lucasade and taint. And I was down there today, and it's quite a mess. So who does that?
Is that all of your questions?
I think so. The other thing is
Okay.
somebody's nicked a tree that we planted down Middle Road, so it'd be nice to have another one of them. And also, that's it. That's me
Okay.
done. Thank you.
So thank you. So we'll notify officers on the halfway house cleansing of the lay-bys there. It is us to do. It is a constant battle there, but I do take your point. And with the flats, again, it's almost by case basis, but I am putting some written procedures together, so I think it tends to be a little bit ad hoc at the moment, but we do liaise with our housing officers quite closely. But it is every sort of challenge, every situation is different for each set of flats. But you're absolutely correct. It is, again, quite a challenge to get into some of the access to some of these sites.
Right. Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak. If I may, could I just make 4 points, please? So, starting with the rubbish at the rear of the High Street, I met with Mr Houghton about 3 years ago and I showed these areas to Mr Houghton then, who acknowledged that obviously there are issues of concern for when you're coming from William Hunter Way. That's the welcome to Brentwood. So I raised this then and I'm asking it now. Is it possible that we can start enforcing, because I'm very grateful that obviously that's not our land, but it's the rear of the shops. Can we start enforcement measures with either the shops or the properties for that rubbish? I've got 4 points. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to do one by one?
Do all your points and then we'll get all the answers. I think it's easiest.
I very much acknowledge the points made by Councillor McShane about the pigeons, the ruins. There's a substantial flock of pigeons that are fed there and they're there flying in at least 3 times a day. I acknowledge your point about the fact that obviously we've got the church, but we have regulars who are actually feeding pigeons on the high street in front of market stalls. So if there's anything we can do to support the market, because I know a number of the products sold in the market are being ruined by the mess from the pigeons. So if that's something that we could look at, I'd be grateful. Regarding the rural fly tipping or picking, again, grateful for the work. I just think it would be beneficial if we can somehow liaise with county, because I think there's times where those roads need to be closed to protect our volunteers and to protect our officers. So I think that county may need to start raising their game with this issue rather than leaving it to the borough. And then just on the last point, I'm just concerned at the pausing of the planting of the trees at Flying Fields. You know, trees have many environmental, biodiverse, ecological benefits. We as a council, we've called this climate emergency declaration. I'm just concerned at the impact of pausing planting trees it's having on this declaration and just what measures, if any, we're taking to offset this. Thank you, Chair.
Mr Houghton, do you want to pick up those points?
Thank you, yes. So I think rubbish at the rear of the High Street, there has been some enforcement undertaken already, so I can ask for details to be provided. For every enforcement, of course, there's a lot more sort of crimes committed. With the pigeons, yeah, I think we're happy to look into this. I think if it's coming with an issue, I think I'll discuss that with the Chair, the options we've got going forward, but certainly happy to look into that. With the rural fly tipping, I think it is our duty to clear. So you're talking about also the sort of litter picking. We are actually finding county are being quite supportive on road closures and things moving forward, so it's quite refreshing in that sense. I think we felt there'd be more of a barrier, but actually county have been quite supportive of waivering the costs and the sort of a protocol, so they've been quite flexible. And planting flying fields, I'll raise your concerns. I mean, obviously, it's being overseen by Thames Chase, who ought to know. I'd like to think that they should know what they're doing, but yes, I can still raise your concerns. Thank you.
I think we just have Councillor Gordon.
Thank you very much, Chair. Not a member of your committee, but appreciate the opportunity to speak. Delighted to hear the High Street in Brentwood. There's the backs of them will be sort of reviewed and hopefully cleaned up. Can I ask that that's also extended to Shenfield? There's a number of shops in Shenfield where the amount of filth, bags overflowing bins, food waste is just left there, and that doesn't help the area. You've also got some residential housing facing onto it. So again, it will help those residents. So if it can be extended to Shenfield, it will be much appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
I'm sure that can be taken on board. Right, I think that's all the questions on the Chair's report. I hope every item doesn't take quite so long, otherwise it might be a very long evening. And we'll move on to the fly tipping action plan. Report begins on page 17 of the agenda. Mr. Ellis, do you have anything to add? You might want to pick up Councillor Barber's misplaced questions, if you don't mind me saying so. The first item about the single item charge, fly tipping targets. You can blame me for the onerous target, Mr. Ellis, I don't mind. And the prosecutions.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the prosecutions first. There's a prosecution is due in court this Thursday, and that's the one that we believe the culprit to be responsible for quite a bit of fly tipping that's been undertaken in the Navestock area. So we're looking forward to the result that we get on that, and hopefully communicating that, as you suggest, Councillor. The indicator, the missed target on the fly tipping, I think it was always going to be a challenge to hit that target. We're doing our best. What's brought the performance down in quarter 2 was the vehicle being off the road for annual testing. That's the grab lorry, which we rely on to remove most of the bulky, sort of heavy waste fly tipping. And the point is made that it isn't a measured indicator. I just thought it put things into context a little bit to show that we are removing the majority of fly tips within 5 working days, whilst appreciating it isn't the PI that we're aiming to achieve. And then the charge for bulky waste. I think the majority of the expense is having the driver and the vehicle and a collection operative to go to site to clear it, so it wouldn't necessarily equate to a halving of the cost.
Okay, thank you very much. I will move the recommendations that are as shown in the report. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair, I'm prepared to second.
Thank you very
Hold
much.
my right to speak.
Councillor McShane.
There's quite a few of those. I just wondered what are the fixed penalty notices for? Are they big tips? You know, how much are they? Are they £400 or £1,000? Because that's what you can charge.
Sorry, I don't have the breakdowns of the individual fixed penalties. I'm sure we could find that for you. They can be issued for a range of things, from littering to leaving a black bag alongside a wheel bin or failing to comply with your duty of care requirements. So there's a whole range of things that could result in that sanction. I don't know at the moment.
Just one more question. Yeah, it's the fly tipping on private land, where this can be quite a problem because it's not up to the council to move it, is it? And sometimes we're talking about, if it's tyres or asbestos, we're talking about a big expense. What can be done about that? You know, what can the landowner do? Take out insurance or that sort of thing, or what? Or can work with the council here?
And so I've previously worked with landowners to sort of help in terms of clearances. So we may take a view that we'll clear once for the landowner, providing they're going to make physical barriers to ensure it cannot occur again. I think you've got to get some of the benefit of the doubt. I'm in conversation with Environmental Health and Environment Agency about what can be done with some of the fly tips. I think some of the landowners seem to be reluctant to do anything about the fly tips themselves as well. So I think that there's a nudge, I think, needed there. But certainly we would welcome working with a landowner to address, I think, sort of encourage physical barriers to ensure future fly tips cannot be done. So, you know, for example, if it's gateways to fields, that we've cleared them previously. We said, look, you must bring your gates forward to ensure there isn't such a sort of an easy tipping target in the future. And providing we have that sort of almost a gentleman's agreement, then we've done so. But obviously we can't continue to keep clearing for private landowners, unfortunately. I do feel sympathy for them, and it is really a challenge for them.
I must admit, we made a barrier of an old cultivator metal, and they pinched it. So,
Yeah. And I think, Mr. Houghton, we're working on the fly tip in Hall Lane, that's on the land just on the bend opposite Butterfly Meadow, which unfortunately seems to be growing. So I think my fear is with those that if these criminals who dump stuff on private land see that there is an accumulation, it'll attract them. It'll be like a magnet, and it will grow very quickly. And we've seen in reports from other parts of the country just how serious they can become. So, you know, it is something we really do need to try and work with landowners to nip in the bud, because we really don't want it escalating. I'm taking the members of the committee first. Councillor Gorton.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask Mr. Ellis a question about the table at the bottom of page 21, which compares the number of fly tips month by month for the current year versus the previous year. It shows a very welcome downward trend during most months, but the figures in July and August have gone the other way. They've gone up in 2025-26 compared to 24-25. Is there any straightforward explanation for that, or is it just how things have panned out? Thank you.
No, there isn't any science behind it that we can fathom. Whether it's longer days, brighter nights, I'm not sure.
Councillor Minot.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Gordon's just asked my question.
Oh, sorry.
Well, no, I think actually, just in terms of that, I appreciate that there's obviously, we can see that there are spikes in the summer months, and obviously with longer days, there's more opportunity to do that. It does strike me that if it was possible, I appreciate the answer we've already been given is that we don't know the reason why those particular months in 2025-26 were so high. Obviously, if it was possible to work out, then we would potentially have warning when those kinds of increases might happen in future. It's interesting to see the fact that the numbers were lower in the 3 months beforehand than they were in 2024-25, and lower in the 4 months after than they were in 2024-25. So, I mean, you might possibly be the case that simply people have just done it in different months. It's positive to see the lower numbers. It's obviously irritating to see the high numbers. It's one of those ones where you just sort of think to yourself, and obviously we can't legislate for when people are going to be fly tipping. They go out and fly tip when they want to, irritatingly. But clearly, if we could work out some kind of pattern, a reason for that pattern, the warning could potentially be helpful to us, and we could be more on the alert than we already are, although we obviously are already on the alert. The other small thing I just wanted to say was, again, as not being a regular member of the committee, I was looking at that table of the reported fly tips, which is being quoted as April 2022 to December 2025. And I was struck by the fact that there are 5 Decembers in that table and 5 Aprils, and therefore it can't be a 4-year period. So I'm concluding that what that actually is the number of reported fly tips from April 2021 to December 2025, and that the reason for the significant jump, and I mean this is not news obviously to members of this committee, but I'm looking at it and trying to interpret the table, and I always tend to try and look at it from a resident's point of view, that the reason for that significant increase towards the end of 2021 is because there was a suppression of fly tipping going on because of COVID and the restrictions around COVID. But just to clarify that number for 2022 quote is probably 2021.
Thank you. Do you want to comment on that, Mr. Houghton?
Yes, it should be April 2021. Just works out back through the graph as well.
Okay, Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you're right. I was very eager to speak on this one. On agenda item, too eager. Couple of things. First of all, if we look at the table here, there's an awful lot of items which are marked as green, which seem quite surprising given the progress and the comments. The date time frame, is that when the action was initiated from? Can I just check, please? Or when it was meant to be completed? Just to make sure I'm interpreting it right first, please.
So I think it's when it's meant to be initiated from.
Thank you. That's less scary. But so on some of these actions, why are there no dates to say when the action will be closed? Because normally when you've got a plan to deal with something, and it's one of the reasons why I won't vote for this item tonight, you would actually say, we're going to do X and we're going to take 6 or 9 months to complete that task. There are very few actions on here where you can be held accountable. Going back to another comment that was made earlier on in the discussion about fly tipping, we talked about we can't reveal the location of cameras. Can I just ask, how many cameras, without talking about specific sites, do we have currently today operational for the purposes of detection of fly tipping, please?
I'd have to come back and ask, get that clarified for you. I believe we have 20 that we can deploy. How many of those are deployed at this moment in time? I'd have to ask the enforcement team to clarify.
Cheers. That would be very helpful if we knew the number deployed from the total available. That would be great because, I mean, some of these things, like P1.2, hotspots identified and portable CCTV cameras deployed in these areas when available. Therefore, that tells me nothing about how many have actually been deployed across the borough as a whole to give me a warm, fuzzy feeling that you're doing the right things about it. They could all be at the depot right now because we don't have the staff to use them. And that's my concern, and it's one of the reasons, given also the SLA targets are being missed, why I'm going to vote against this item with respect. But thank you for all that you do. I do appreciate it, everything that's done from the depot, particularly the larger fly tips. The clear-ups are quite a challenge, and we do appreciate that work. And please don't misinterpret any of my comments.
Okay. Councillor Gerard.
Councillor Barber, we did discuss the table earlier, and we will take or have taken an action to update it so the timeframes are a lot clearer, because I agree with you, the status could be interpreted many different ways.
I'd like to turn to non-members of the committee now. I think Councillor Russell first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Councillor McShane makes a good point in regards to what he was saying about the FPNs. I think it would be good to have that in report, identifying where they're actually being, where they're being enforced. When you look at the table, the graph on 1.6, firstly, I'd like to say it's great to have this data. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a real move forward. But when we look at that graph on 1.6, if you consider the peaks and the troughs, there is an upward trend, notwithstanding the fact it's dropped off as usual in August. But I just want to note that it's still an upward trend. So whilst we we celebrate the fact that I see Councillor Minot shaking his head there, but that graph is showing an upward trend. Would you not agree? So yeah, it's great to have that data, but to me, when I look at that and I look at the peaks and the troughs, I see it going in one direction, and that's going up. So yeah, I appreciate any comments on that. 5 working days collecting the fly tipping, hugely commendable, absolutely fantastic work. I think it's a real challenge to collect this stuff, and to do it in that time, I think is absolutely fantastic. That's all I've got to say on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you want to comment at all on the general trend? I mean, it is slightly upwards, but you know, that's the bit we can't control, unfortunately.
I think we probably all agree that the fly tipping levels are too high. I think that's the safer thing to say. I think I did try and do a quick statistical sort of straight line curve, and the stats behind it was such a poor fit that you couldn't really say one way or the other. I mean, I think to the naked eye, you can see that the peaks are going up each time, and the trough's about the same. So it wouldn't be unreasonable to say it's increasing. I think equally, it would just as be, I think it's of a high level. I wouldn't say although it's slightly lower this year, I wouldn't celebrate that as a success. I'd just say we have probably stabilised, but what we really want to do is to start to reduce.
Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Still not a member of your committee, and I do appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'd like to delve further into the issues around the fly tipping on Hall Lane. As you've already heard, I drove down Hall Lane today and I was delighted to see the team from the depot picking up litter along the road. Full black bags every 30 or 40 yards along the curbside tells a fairly depressing story. So thank you to the guys from the depot for the hard work in cleaning the rubbish up. Now that's the good news. Now the bad news, Chair, you mentioned about the fly tip on Hall Lane. The bad news is now there's 2 large fly tips along Hall Lane, both set back from the road but clearly visible from the road, and I accept that these fly tips are on private land. However, I think we should be doing more. 2 quick points. I'd like to call on Brentwood to consider placing more cameras on Hall Lane. It does seem to be a hotspot. And secondly, picking up on Councillor McShane's point, the landowners did not ask to have this rubbish dumped on them, and they are facing costs of thousands of pounds potentially to have it removed. So I do call on Brentwood Council to work more closely with the landowners to clean up this land. If you leave it piled up there, all it seems to do is actually encourage more people to come along and use it as a tip. So the sooner it's cleaned up, the better. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor Fortune.
Yeah, apologies, Chair, because I know you were asking the views of non-committee members' notes. Well, let me see, on the page 19, I think that the report is showing about a funding application is showing the scrap fly tipping campaign, which is really pertinent for householders that, unbeknownst to them, large electrical items, etc. Work done in homes is being left as fly tips. So this awareness is excellent. So there's I think that's a really good couple of paragraphs there in the report. And if I could reiterate all the compliments of our enforcement team, our depot, in all weathers, collecting what can be really quite dangerous. And we've got to remember that if we were out there doing that ourselves, exactly what that would be like. So thank you.
Okay, I think that's right. I just want to say one thing about the targets, Councillor Barber. When we took over control, there were no targets, for whatever reason, and we introduced the 5-day target. And as you can see, the depot teams responded magnificently and were consistently hitting that. The officers didn't thank me, but I said, well, we're doing so well, let's stretch the target, and I suggested that we introduce the 3-day target, which is a tough target. But I think we owe it to our residents to strive to do as well as we possibly can. And the officers didn't mention it, but one of the reasons why the target slipped particularly in one quarter, is because the vehicle was off the road for maintenance for a period. So I apologise to the officers for putting them in the firing line by introducing a really tough target. But I think that's what our residents deserve. I think I reckon they're capable of doing it, and I think we'll get there. So I'm not going to apologise. I'm sorry, Mr. Houghton and Mr. Ellis, for putting you on the spot and consequently putting you in the firing line. But hitting the 5-day target was magnificent. Let's see if we can do better. That's what I've said, and they're really doing a fantastic job. It's a blight, and it's one that we all have to fight against. We need to make people aware that if they use any private contractor to collect their waste, that it's their obligation to check that they're properly licensed. And if there is anything that identifies the address from which the waste has come, that they can be prosecuted for giving their waste to an unlicensed contractor. That's where the messaging's got to start. And we all need to just work together to get those messages across. So that said, I'm going to I've moved the recommendations, and I think we'll put them to, you want to come back?
Yeah, sorry, can I ask for a recorded vote, please, Chair?
Do you have a requisite number of members? I think it's 3.
32.
Give a second as well.
Yeah. Okay, you can have a recorded vote.
Please can members indicate for, against or abstain when I call your name. Councillor Horsfeld.
4.
Councillor Gerard. 4. Councillor Barber.
Against.
Councillor Fulcher. Councillor Gibson.
Against.
Councillor Gordon. Gorton, sorry. Councillor McShane. Councillor Minot. And Councillor Patel. Thanks, members. That's carried, Chair.
So move on to item 6, which is the smart litter bins proposal. You've got the recommendations, and the report begins on page 33. Mr. Ellis, do you have anything to add at this stage?
Oh, thank you, Chair.
So I'm going to move the recommendation. I do want to make one slight change to the wording. Recommendation 1 is as it stands. In recommendation 2, I'd like it to read that a further report be brought back to Scrutiny, Performance and Standards Committee at the conclusion of the 3-month trial to establish it and replace success with performance ahead of any decision being taken by the Clean and Green Committee on whether to continue a rollout. So it's just a substitution of one word, performance, for success. Other than that, I'll move that amended recommendation along with recommendation 1. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to second and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you very much. Anyone wish to speak? Councillor Minot.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, again, obviously, not being a permanent member of this committee and knowing less than, obviously, I'm sure some other permanent members of this committee would do about the process of this. It's very interesting to read this report. One of the things that particularly struck me when reading it was 1.6 on page 35, paragraph 1.6, the insights from the other councils using the smart bins, because we have in total there, we have effectively the feedback from 6 different authorities. And you get different feedback from different authorities introducing these kinds of systems. Some of them are positive, in fact most of them are positive. Southampton City Council, London Borough of Sutton, and the fact that the London Boroughs of Havering, and then the North East Lincolnshire Council and Reigate and Banstead are other councils who've gone through with this. They're on the positive side, but then the London Borough of Waltham Forest is looked at it, and the conclusion that we've got here is that the containers were considered to be expensive, and when compared to standard litter bins, and the council reverted to using traditional litter bins. And what that says to me is that we can't know in advance what our experience will be like, because the experience for other authorities has varied. They've looked at their own situations, they've tried it out, they've found out what the consequences of doing this with their own areas are, and different authorities have taken different views on what they learn from what they've done in terms of trying it out. So we're also obviously being told on page 37 in terms of the financial implications that there are no financial commitments associated with this trial. It is a free trial. And in those circumstances, it seems to me that it's a perfectly sensible thing to do to stick our toe for free in the water and to find out whether our experience is a similar experience to that of Southampton or Sutton or Havering or North East Lincolnshire or Reigate and Banstead, or whether it's more like the experience that Waltham Forest had. We can only find that out by doing the trial. Doing the trial doesn't cost us any money. And once we've done the trial, we can obviously find out what the consequences are, and it's only by going through that process that we'll find that out. So it just seems eminently sensible to me to try it out. If there was a significant downside to trying it out, for instance, financially, then obviously we'd be in a different situation. There isn't a significant financial downside. If we've got the operational bandwidth to do it and it's not costing us any money, then as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a very good idea to go forward with the trial. And once we've done the trial, we can see what the consequences are and we can assess it, and then we will go forward from there. But that's obviously the appropriate way of doing it, to assess it, to do the trial, then to assess it, and then to look at how we go forward. We've had suggestions in terms of certain other things of doing it in a different way. I don't think there is a wise suggestion. Doing it this way, with that sequence, is the wise way of doing it. So I'm fully in favour of this.
Thank you.
Can I check, Councillor Gibson, did you put your hand up? No, okay.
Councillor Gorton.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions for Mr. Ellis. The first is, it's around the cost of the standard bins. Actually, I know this is discussed, the rollout of new standard bins is discussed in the next item. But I don't think we've got a cost anywhere of the standard 110 litre bin. Do you have that figure to hand?
I think they're in the region of around about £300 plus fixing, but I can confirm that.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is, with the big belly bins, smart bins, this is paragraph 1.8 at the top of page 36. It's mentioned that they are fitted with a compactor. Is that actually the case? I went on the Big Belly website this afternoon, and it seemed to me, from what I read there, that only the bigger 500 plus litre bins are fitted with a compactor. Could you confirm that, please?
Yes, happy to. The ones we're looking at will have the compaction mechanism, which is solar operated.
Councillor Barber next.
Thank you, Chair. We've discussed this in previous meetings, I think over on the scrutiny side, and it won't come as any surprise that I don't agree that this is a good use of public money. Councillor Minor states that it's a free trial. There's no cost involved. I would suggest that the time that the officers spend putting together these reports costs money. I would suggest that the time spent in installing these things and checking with Essex Highways and put it in the planning applications to put this onto our high street or other areas takes time and effort and money. Anyone who thinks that this comes for free is not dealing with reality. You're looking at just what the company that wants to sell you the product, and let's be honest, it's a company that's trying to make a profit, and that they're entitled to do so out of the council. And you've really got to ask yourself, if you put, and it says it in this report, you're planning to put these bins in certain areas where we have daily street collection. We don't need electronic devices to tell us a bin that's full when we've got our own officers walking up and down those streets, cleaning those streets on a daily basis. I look at the comments and the feedback from the Socialist Borough of Waltham Forest, who basically have concluded that the containers were considered very expensive when compared to the standard litter bins, and the council have now reverted to using traditional litter bins. Well, no surprise there. I predict that if you do put this in there, you won't have the staff ready to pop out at the drop of a hat to go and empty these bins. You would be better focusing on the larger bins, which I commend you on securing. That's a good thing, which we see rolled out around the borough, and having a realistic collection schedule for each and every bin around the borough based on experience and feedback from the people collecting from those bins. That's a better way to do it. You can then have a schedule and you can align your resource to that schedule, not responding to when a bleeper goes off and someone's got to drive across the borough to empty one particular bin. This is complete overuse of technology. We don't need it. It's a waste of money. It represents poor value.
Councillor Forcher.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really proud to be part of a forward-thinking council, but I have to state I do have my reservations, and certainly my colleagues were very, very patient in listening to those. In terms of the cost of the bins, the compaction aspect of them, and also I think quite a significant concern for me is that they reduce the effectiveness of our infrastructure that's been very thorough and is based on the bins we have, the replacement of the bins we have, and the cleaning of those bins. So I was interested to hear the discussion this evening, but I do have concerns about this.
Thank you very much. Right, a couple of non-members of the committee. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, you know, at the end of the free trial, I assume they expect us to buy them. How much would it cost to actually have these across the borough? Has anybody calculated that figure?
What it costs? I think that's in the report.
Okay, I haven't got the report. Sorry.
So the Big Belly smart bins are to purchase outright are £4,495 each, or you can rent them for £79.95 a month.
So how many would we need?
I mean, obviously, it would depend on our conclusions of the trial. If you're suggesting to just purchase the two, or you're saying how many would we need across the borough, I think is open to debate. I think within the report have been fairly open that those costs escalate quite quickly. And I think even from an officer point of view, there is some thoughts that you could, if you purchased many of these, you could actually employ additional staff rather than bins. So it is something for members to consider. I believe some of the others have said so, although they've noted there are benefits. I think there is a cost to that. It's for each administration to weigh up the cost versus the benefits of these sort of situations.
Councillor Forcher, you wanted to come back and then go to the non-member.
Just to add to what I said, I feel it's the timing as well. I don't think it's the right time. I think there should be more choice in the market of who we choose to seek bins or free trial from. I feel this is, perhaps something for 27, 28, but not now.
No, Councillor Jarrett.
I'd just like to come back on the point you were making, Councillor Gordon. I mean, I don't want to prejudge what the findings would be, but I wouldn't expect that these would be rolled out across the borough. I mean, the test case, I think, would be in locations that perhaps aren't collected more frequently. Yes, daily, if you're scheduled to collect daily, there's less of a use case for that. But if there are rural locations where it would make sense, then maybe a case could be made for it. But it would not be the position that these would be rolled out across the borough. There is just not a use case for that. Yeah. Councillor Slade.
Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on the cost of the Big Belly smart bins, it's said £4,500, which is saying covers warranty, maintenance, cleaning, branding support, and management costs and software licenses. What's the installation cost of these, or is that included in the full? Thank you.
Okay, and then I think Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee, but welcome the fact that I'm permitted to speak. On page, where are we? Is it page? Oh, sorry. Regarding the locations, at page 5, potential locations, either outside Marks and Spencer's in Brentwood High Street, Brentwood Station, or the lay-by in the A12 A127. I think outside Marks and Spencer's would be an excellent spot to trial. Another location to consider is the William Hunter Way car park. That bin is constantly overflowing. So that could be another area to continue. I still remain confused as to regarding whether our vehicles require the in-cab technology to make this trial successful. I'm still unclear if we actually have the vehicles, so if we've actually got the vehicles that have got this technology. And if not, one, do we need the technology to make this a successful trial? If we do require the technology and we do not have it, what measures are we going to undertake to be able to monitor the performance and to enable the live monitoring? And looking at their website, they then reference about a Big Belly's clean management console and clean mobile apps. Would we require those, and would we need to purchase licences for the in-cab technology, for this management console and for the clean mobile apps?
Do you want to answer those questions, Mr. Ellis?
Thank you, Chair. The software runs independently of any in-cab devices, so there would be a monitor in the office. The notification would come through to the office, and we would relay the instructions or requests to the team. Thank you.
Do you want to speak, Liz? Did you want to come back?
Okay, so thank you for clearing that up. So if this trial's deemed a success, and then we do require the cost to the monthly cost, is that an additional 60,000 to that? And sorry, just one more point. And then just going back on what Mr. Hodgson said, I have to say, I do agree that obviously this is a substantial cost, and I do think that this is something we really need to weigh up versus employing additional operatives. So I think that's a very valid point made earlier.
I mean, certainly to be clear that any report that comes back in would have to, I think, give a full scenario of costs and what you're entering. So I'm open-minded about having a trial, perhaps, but sceptical about whether it really is a solution. I think it's probably the healthy place to be of this. And then, so if we do bring something back in, I think you have to investigate those full life costs of entering these sort of agreements. But certainly, any report, we're going back into the detail. Thank you.
I think Councillor Russell, you wanted to contribute.
Yes, thank you. I did indicate earlier, but I think your Vice Chair...
I'd like to take the members of the committee first before the non-members.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I welcomed this report when I first saw it, because it was something that I was looking at when I was chair of this, chair of the Environment Committee, probably about 10 years ago now. And at the time, unfortunately, it was just far too costly. So we looked at other areas, and so not just other boroughs, but other countries. And Germany, Japan and Switzerland, all of which at the top are driving high recycling rates and education. That's shared across. But interesting, with Germany, it was more about deposit schemes to reduce littering. In Japan, slightly different, no bins. No bins there in Japan. You take your rubbish home or face a 30,000 yen fine. Seems a good way of doing it. No. So it's culture. It's the culture of take it home that they Switzerland, I like. They have. They also have street fines. They as we do. They have high public cleaning services. They have an ingrained culture of recycling, as I said before, education. They have smaller openings on their bins to discourage you from using them, which is quite interesting. I guess what I'm trying to say overall is that we need to look at other places as well. While I welcome this trial and see how it works out, how it pans out, sometimes I feel, well, okay, the more remote bins, which are less likely to get emptied, are the places that you need this. And then other other reports I heard, and I've heard it from one of our guys that works on the street cleaning. This was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and he said one of the bins in High Street, or the bins in High Street, particularly around Marks and Spencers and the cafes and the bakeries around that area, he was emptying a bin 3 times a day, and I was like, it can't be 3 times a day. I think what he was meaning was that he was actually just compacting them down to make more space, possibly. So yeah, I get the compacting idea. I think that's really, really good. But I think we just need to look at other countries, how they work. Again, go back to the educational piece, get into schools and, you know, get the children educating their parents about littering. So yeah, I just bang on about education all the time. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you. Yeah, very helpful to have some of those international comparisons and how different countries manage these things is sometimes a bit of an eye-opener. So I think, Councillor Murphy, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah, just one point. I'm really think this is a good idea. We need to do it. We need to look at different ways across the piece. My only concern is that, you know, on a lay-by on the 127 is vandalism. This is and who is responsible for the costs of that? I suppose they will be insured and all the rest of it, but where they are remote, and let's be perfectly honest, these are very expensive pieces of kit. They could go missing, you know, not entirely, but they will steal bits off of them and stuff like that. That's my concern with that. You know, it's just the fact of the replacing of it and vandalism.
Do you want to pick up that point, Mr. Ellis?
Thank you, Chair. I'll need to check the insurance elements of it. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've heard everybody. I think we have just about heard everybody. Oh, Councillor Barber.
We just request a recorded vote, please.
Yes, you can. I just want to say a few words. So I'm very much with Councillor Minot on this. Look, we've got the opportunity of a trial, and I do accept that there's been officer time that has been used to produce a report. We were asked to look at this by another committee. So we're trying to make the council process work, not turn around to another committee and say, terribly sorry, we're not going to take any notice of you. They wanted us to look at this. We've looked at it. We've done some background research, finding out what other boroughs have found. And we do need to keep an open mind on these things. If there's going to be minimal cost to us, if we decide we like any of it, and it's quite interesting to hear Councillor Murphy's comments worrying about them being in the lay-bys, because my reaction was that actually the best place for these might be those remote locations where it's really unpredictable how much rubbish accumulates. All you need is a couple of lorries to pull into a lay-by and decide they're going to empty all of their rubbish bags, and you've suddenly got an explosion of rubbish in a lay-by, haven't you? So my thinking was that might be the best place for them. But I think we've all got to have a bit of an open mind about this. It's cost us a bit in officer time. Yes, Councillor Barber, I understand that. But it behoves us to look at new technologies, look at new options, so that we can put them in the context of what else is on offer. As Councillor Russell, who's unfortunately just left, explained, there are many other ways. In Paris, they excavate underneath the bins, so they compress the rubbish down below street level. I think they have a similar system in some Dutch cities as well, where they have return schemes in Dublin. You go to Dublin now, where they have the plastic bottle return scheme. You see people going around pulling plastic bottles out of bins to get the money back. So all these things all play out in different ways, and we do need to look at all of them. And this is just one small element that we say we're going to have a look at. And I think that's what we ought to do. So I'm happy to move to vote again, have a recorded vote.
Please can members indicate for, against or abstain when I call your name. Councillor Worsfold.
For.
Councillor Gerard. For. Councillor Barber. Against. Councillor Fulcher. Councillor Gibson. Councillor Gorton. Councillor McShane. Councillor Minot. And Councillor Patel. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much for your participation and your many comments. We will be coming back to this one. So, we're still on bins. Item 7, Binfrastructure Action Plan Update. Begins on page 41 of the agenda. Mr. Ellis, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you, Chair.
In case, I will move the recommendations on page 41. Any questions or comments from the committee? Oh yes, sorry, do I have a seconder?
I will.
Myself.
I will second and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you very much. Comments from the committee. I just see Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee and I very much appreciate being given the opportunity to speak. I'm pleased to see on the report that we are actually considering, or the fact that officers have actually revisited the possibility of implementing gun bins. I first raised this in 24, undertook a gun walk in the High Street in February 25, and as said in the previous item, part of the solution is education, and I really do believe that with the gun bins, this would encourage behavioural change. With a visible gun bin, I think it will encourage people to actually place their gun in the bin rather than on the gun bin signs or actually on the outside of the bin or on the bin. I also feel that the gum drop bins meet with our declaration of a climate emergency, as the actual bins are recycled along with the contents and processed into a new gun drop bin, so the whole cycle can start again. I welcome the fact it's been revisited, but I would like to ask the officers if they could undertake 2 site visits at Shenfield Station, where you'll see a significant amount of gum on the pavement, and also at the Bay Tree Centre. I think the fact you're revisiting this issue, and you can see actually just the state of those 2 areas where these 2 locations could possibly be considered for a trial.
Mr. Ellis, do you want to come back with on the questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The bin we're proposing to try first of all isn't one of those bright pink gumdrop bins, but it will, as you're suggesting, test out the use of them. The gumdrop bins, I think the latest prices I had was 5 bins for £2,700 per year. So we would need a commitment to those. But initially we can test out the thing, and of course happy to take on those site visits you ask.
Councillor Minot.
Yes, sorry, Chair. Yeah, I just, again, obviously, not being a usual member of the committee, it's interesting to read these reports. I do think, obviously been a councillor for quite a while now, and I do think, I find it very positive that we are going through the process of looking at new options, and also having the fact that we have gone through the process now of building up the infrastructure database on bins. We certainly went through a period which was very frustrating for me as a ward councillor, where residents can see that there are issues of littering and have suggested and make the suggestion that new bins can be located. We went through a period when we were basically being told as councillors that there was no option to put new bins in. And that was very frustrating because you can see the problems, you could see that there was the potential solution to that, albeit obviously all of these things cost some money and it has to be looked at. So to be in the position now where we're rolling out new bins, we've got a clear idea of the quality and the status of the bins that we actually have, also even the location of some of the bins that we have. I think those things are very are very positive, and I think they're much to be welcomed. I think the points also that have been made about the gum bins, I mean, I actually happened to notice coming through one of the passageways into the high street a day or so ago, the amount of gum that there is on the pavements. Any of those more sort of little sheltered corners where people are hanging out, and also the footfall is probably not wearing things away so much. There are going to be locations around the borough where we have issues with that sort of thing. Again, good to scope these things out, good to find out what the options are. If we can sort out the problems by these means, then these are obviously good steps to take forward. And I'm sure it's always welcome to hear the suggestions from members as to where there are problems, because members are out and about, like residents are out and about, to know where those kinds of problems are, to weigh up those options and then to feed that back. So I think those are positives. And I just wanted to say that there are a lot of positives in these reports.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair. I'm probably going to hold my nose on this one and actually vote for it, because, despite the reference to smart bins, complete waste of money. But let's talk about the positive. First of all, thank you to you and the officers for responding to requests to increase the frequency of emptying bins, certainly within that North Ward. Councillor Pound and Mattel and myself appreciate that. And thank you for fixing enforcement notices on the side of some bins as requested. So that's definitely the good news. Here's my challenge. We've had a few people, not many, who have actually decided that those are not sticky enough and they're going to pull them off. So please, can you look at making a more permanent sticker that is harder to pull off for people who want to then subsequently use it for their domestic waste? That's one request, please. Give serious consideration to that, because I think it will help you reduce your number of fly tips around the borough, because a lot of people do not realise it's illegal to put domestic waste into street bins. And I think you will just solve some of the problem if you can really get a permanent sticker. The second one is the integration between the open spaces team and the normal street care team. Truthfully, I have been promised for the last 2 years that that was in progress. We have one litter bin, which is 1 metre onto Hutton Recreation Grounds, which is emptied by a different team from the one in Wash Road, which is round the corner about 100 feet away. This is just crazy, sending out different teams to different parts of the borough to do similar tasks. Please look at the synergy you're going to achieve if you do that. I know there'll be obstacles. I know there'll be reasons to say we can't do it at the moment because it's difficult, but really that's how you're going to improve the quality service. Please have one team emptying the bins across Brentwood, because then you'll have more resource. Thank you.
Do you want to come back on that, Mr. Ellis?
No, I appreciate it. It's taken some time. That's the aim, is to have the one team doing it, and we hope to be in a position to have that one team service within the next month or so before the parks start to get very busy.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. It's just on page 49 about the IT, the actual way the residents can report litter and overflowing bins. Perhaps, are we looking into that? Because that's a really important point, that they need to be able to get an easy platform to get onto to report. I wondered how that's progressing. Thank you.
Yeah. Come back on that one.
Yeah, I can pick that one up. Sorry, I'm having problems with this mic. Yeah, apologies. The TBC on there was a prompt to me to add a comment, and the comment never got added. We have been discussing with IT a way of having its own category so people can report that. We can then run reports on it. We haven't progressed it, or it hasn't been progressed at this stage, but it's something we're very mindful of, and it will help.
Councillor Fulcher.
Thank you, Chair. I definitely celebrate the positives within this report, as certainly of infrastructure, which I've alluded to earlier. And I do share, although we've had a lot of good work on the collection of gum removal, bubble gum removal. So I do share what Councillor Slade said earlier. Now, it does appear to be, it's perhaps outside licensed premises where there is a prevalence of deposits of gum. You know, litter, gum, fly tips, they're the responsibility of everyone in some form, not just street care operatives and our depot. Is there a conversation to be had with our licensing team at all in terms of I don't know, putting some kind of clause on licences to help with this matter?
I think that's a suggestion we could put to them. That seems a constructive one. We can have a look at it, yes? Okay, I can't see any other hands, so thank you for Councillor Jarrett.
Before Councillor Barber raises it, the table we are going to update so that it will be clear. The target date is start or end, and things that have been completed will be marked as being completed.
The only thing I'd like to say in conclusion is we are looking at getting the gum busters back. That was part of a bid to the Keep Britain Tidy campaign last year, I believe. We got some money from them. If that's not successful, we do have a little bit of money, as we all observed at the budget meeting last week, and I think that should be one thing that should be spent on is cleaning up our pavements. Shenfield, between the car parks and the station at the moment, is very, very bad. That's particularly on the side with Tesco. So we really could do with getting a quick blast on the pavements there to get them clear, and then get a bin in and hope that people see that and use that rather than deposit on the pavement. We can only hope. We can only try. So thank you very much for all your comments. I'll now put the recommendation to the vote. Can I see those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Glad something is tonight. We're moving on to item 8, which is the Q3 performance. Begins on page 51. Mr. Houghton, do you want to add anything at this stage?
Nothing further to add, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
In that case, I'll move the recommendation that's on page 51. Do I have a second?
Yes, Chair, I will second and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments from members of the committee? Let's see, Councillor Gorton first.
Thank you, Chair. Can I refer to page 63, halfway down, percentage of fly tips cleared within 3 working days. For the last quarter, 84%, but that is indicated in green, whereas 2 quarters before that, it's 83% and it's indicated in red. Is that just a typo, or should it be, is there a reason that it's in green rather than red? Page 63, halfway down.
Do you want to pick that up?
So I think we believe it's just reflecting the trend that it's improving, but I'll get some clarity on the performance table. I tend to look at the figures rather than the colours, but I do take your point.
Got the wrong crayon out, perhaps. Councillor McShane.
Yes, it's just the waste collection for trade waste. The way I read it, does that mean you're not actually going to do it anymore? Page 59. Page 59.
No. I mean, it's that we are. The delay is a genuine delay. Into the trade waste, we are looking to roll out. We do deliver the trade waste service already. It's just around the in-cab technology that we want to introduce to that. So it's a delay in that. So we're looking to introduce in-cab technology, which I think will improve the service for the commercial waste offering considerably. So it's just to be able to provide.
The cost of that, then, actually, you will pass on to the people that want their trade waste disposed of.
Yes, and that's correct. We have to do so.
Okay, any more comments or questions? Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not able to support this report, unfortunately, because of the failure to deliver certain items. We've got some good points. It's good to see the uptick in garden waste bins, so well done there. That's to be commended. But under, for example, trade waste, you've got actually the last quarterly update says revenue growth bid submitted. I guess we must know whether that was accepted or not as a revenue growth bid. That would be one question. If we go over, we've also got the open spaces restructure, where basically it's just we've heard that it's going to be within the next month. That wasn't clear from this table in this report. Unless we'd heard that from Mr. Ellis earlier, we would not know that. So presumably that's why it's amber. But if I go over the page to the KPIs, the number of missed KPIs, and I don't have a coloured version of this, I've got a paper copy, that we've missed is just extraordinary. Environmental health, percentage of service requests that are investigated within time for 5 days. Why are we missing so many KPIs? I mean, you talked about the rural fly tipping resolution KPI, but this report is peppered with a very large number of misses on the KPIs. Missed bins as a percentage of total collected, well, that's in the red, but you don't actually, I'm not sure anywhere we've got the number of complaints about litter that's discarded down the street after the recycling collections have been. I mean, we've all had it as councillors, people phoning us up and saying that the street looks filthy after the bin men have been. There is no KPI for that, but we all know it's a service failure. Why are so many KPIs at the moment, given that I understand we've resolved all of the staffing issues about new contracts for staff? Why is the service quality not there at the moment? Because it clearly isn't.
Mr. Holden, would like to respond to that?
I mean, there isn't a single answer because there's different KPIs within there. Some obviously relate to recycling. I mean, I think we are due to review these KPIs. So I think many of the targets around recycling have been historically set, and I think and we have never been able to achieve. Hence, one of the reasons we're bringing the next item along in sort of the waste pilot scheme is I think many of these are actually related to each other. So if you take the sort of amount of recycling glass or the amount of recycling food waste, cans, plastic, so that they're all below target because the residual waste is too high. So you say that's the other target that's also failing. So they all tend to be linked together. So unfortunately, they are a suite of KPIs that I'm not surprised to see failing. I wouldn't necessarily say it's possibly a service failure in terms of operative, but rather a sort of policy or strategic failure. That is, we set out to collect our waste in a certain way, and therefore you're not likely to achieve these targets given how we collect our waste, how our waste service is set up. I think with regards to missed bins, it is disappointing. It's a target we've only introduced in the last year, so we are trying to find that happy medium. But again, I wanted to set a harder target to achieve rather than one that was easy to achieve. So we are beginning to improve on missed bins. They are coming down, but each, although you can sort of benchmark against other authorities, each authority has a slightly different set of bin collection systems, and so you do have to almost create your own eventually. So we are sort of creating that baseline. It may be something we have to review. And again, I think with the fly tips as well, I think in our defence, I think we always said we wanted a 5-day target, and that was introduced quite recently. There was a push to a stretch 3-day target, which I think as officers we don't believe can be achieved comfortably with the resourcing levels we have, but we're certainly willing to try. So I think they are very challenging targets. I do take your point, but I think we are certainly with the resources we have, we've improved the service over the last couple of years. We took those same targets from 2 years ago.
Thank you very much. Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee, but very much welcome the opportunity to speak. Just touching on one of the points that Councillor Barber's made there about missed bin collections, I'd just be interested to know if when residents forget to put their bins out and we do go back and collect the bins, whether that be classed as a missed bin collection when it's actual resident error. But that's one point. And then just on, I just have several points on Appendix A, page 2, improve our street scene through street cleaning. I would just like to make Mr Houghton aware, you have a member of your team who goes out at 4 o'clock in the morning. I've seen him. He cleans, he goes out, and then he goes back out again at 7 o'clock. You really do have some dedicated members of staff that actually need some recognition for the work that they're doing. And actually that just would lead me into, actually I'd like to express my personal thanks to Dean, Jasmine and their team, because in my opinion, I think they are the unsung and unrecognised heroes of our council. I think they do an excellent job in difficult times, and I think that was demonstrated recently when, you know, if you pardon the pun, there was a fly tip that literally fell off the back of a lorry in Hanging Hill Lane. Graham, the operative, spotted that very early in the morning, contacted Dean, and within a very short period of time, you had Graham, Tim, Cliff out there sweeping, clearing that road, making it safe. They had to do that by hand. They had no assistance from county, and then the next day they were back out again cleaning and maintaining that road and making it safe. So I'd be grateful if you could pass on my thanks and just obviously recognising just the type of fly tipping they're dealing with. And then going back to the targets that you mentioned earlier about 3 days, I think that's a good target. I think it's an achievable target, but my concern would be the fact that you've got NES only working 2 days a week on a Monday and a Thursday. And I'm aware of an incident, for instance, last week where there was a fly tip on the Tuesday, and the request was from NES, could they leave it until the Thursday, till 9:30 on the Thursday, to look for evidence. Now, I'm not being critical of NES, but I do think to achieve that target of 3 days, that you're going to have to look to possibly expanding the days that NES are available to look for evidence, because I'm also aware that you're having to deploy your own staff to actually go out to take the photos. So it's how you just improve that to meet, which I think is an achievable target of 3 days.
Thank you very much. Can I just 100% endorse, Councillor Slade, what you said about some of the wonderful staff we have who do every day go above and beyond. And please, Mr. Houghton, Mr. Addis, can you make sure you pass our congratulations and thanks on to all the relevant staff from the whole committee. I think I speak for everybody for once, I hope. And yeah, I think we'd appreciate it if that could be passed on. Do you want to pick up Councillor Slade's point?
I think the two, I'll pick up on just on the missed bins. They're all classed as missed bins, and so it would take a long time to decipher which ones have got to put the bin out, and so you will always have a residual number of missed bins, even if they weren't missed, if that makes sense. So you give the benefit of the doubt. Some people are going to just put them out and say, "You've missed my bin" when they put it out late. But nevertheless, we still want to get that down. So this is what I'm saying. It is quite hard to get a meaningful target set in the first year. But I feel we need to start reporting on missed bin levels. I mean, I genuinely do have some concerns about the levels of missed bins we have, so it's something we are working on. With regards to, sorry, the second point was around NES. So we're having regular meetings now between the depot and NES as well. They're coming down to those, and we are beginning to tighten up the procedure between the two teams, because I think we do want to be responding quite quickly and getting the evidence for them rather than waiting. I think they're slightly frustrated when we're responding too quickly at times, but we do understand what they require in terms of evidence. So there's a procedural notes being put together and some extra training for the staff that pick up the fly tips, how to record evidence, how to pass on to NES.
Thank you. A couple of other hands. I've got one follow-up question on missed bins. Can you put absolute numbers on what 0.1% means, and we've missed the target by 0.05%. What does that mean in terms of numbers of bins out of the total we collect?
I don't have the workings to hand, but what I can do is perhaps send that round to give you specific numbers, to give some context. I mean, it is still quite a low number.
Yeah, because they're tiny percentages and they're really fractional misses of an already small percentage. I think it'd be very useful for everyone to have a handle on what that actually means in terms of the numbers of bins. I think Councillor McShane, you had your hand up.
Yes, page 61, percentage of food premises that are compliant. It's 95% now. What is that other 5%? Is that ones that are under the 5-star or what?
So again, I'm going to have to get some confirmation from the director for Mr. Brace on this matter. But my understanding, I think, is quite often it is just where we are in the cycle, because this was very low in the first quarter, and then you see it creeping up. So I think it's more about how many premises they've actually inspected and gone through. So it's not that it's only there's 5% that are non-compliant. I think it's quite rare that you have a non-compliant situation. But it's more about that. I think we've just yet to check that they're premises. But I'd need to come back on that.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Murphy.
Just one little observation. I don't want to sound like Councillor Parker now, but have been around a little bit of a long time. When we were first councillors, it was incumbent on us, and I spoke to Paul about this earlier, all councillors were made to go out on the dust, and you had to put your yellow jacket on and you had to go just to see how tough it is. And I don't think it would be a bad idea if we reintroduced it after May.
Health and safety.
Yeah, I would like you to see you get that one past the health and safety people. Do you want to comment on that, Mr. Ellis? I believe you two went out prior to the waste trial being commenced.
Yeah, we probably contributed to the number of missed collections.
Right, I think that's everybody. So we have a recommendation. Yes, you can indeed. Do you have a seconder?
Please can members indicate for or against or abstain when I call your name. Councillor Worsfold.
For.
Councillor Gerard. For. Councillor Minot.
For.
Councillor Barber.
Against.
Councillor Vulture. For. Councillor Gibson.
Against.
Councillor McShane.
Against.
Councillor Patel.
Against.
Sorry. Councillor Galton. Thanks, members. That's carried, Chair.
Very much, that's carried. I'll move on to the final item tonight, which we'll get through very quickly, I'm sure. Item 9, Pilot Waste Collection Scheme, begins on page 67. And Appendix A is also published on the supplementary agenda, and that begins on page 3 of that document. Mr. Houghton, at this stage, do you have anything to add?
No, nothing to add at this stage, thank you, but happy to take any questions.
I'll move the recommendations as set out on pages 67 and 68 of the agenda. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to second and reserve my right to speak. And we've already the first candidate.
I don't believe that's a declarable interest, is it, Swyatt? Yeah, we'll minute it, just for completeness. Right, who wants to go first?
Before we actually speak individually, could we, the pack we were given just before this meeting has 5 shades of grey for us to identify which percentage relates to which part of the pie chart. It is virtually impossible, unless you print it off on a colour printer like Councillor Gorton this afternoon, to know the actual detail of what we're looking at, because it is not labelled correctly unless I'm missing something. If someone can tell me how I can interpret that from different shades of grey and then vote on it in an informed manner, I'm very confused. Could one of the officers, please, as a courtesy to us, talk through the percentages? Yeah, with I've got a colour version up on the screen here now.
For God's sake, I think Councillor Gibson is
But
attempting to
I
help
think
you
it would be
out.
good for an officer to summarise the findings, so then we go into debate, please.
Councillor Barber, would you like a coloured copy? I'm happy to, yeah.
Councillor Gorton.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a suggestion. Is it possible to show these pie charts on the big screens? So.
Can I make an observation?
Yes. Councillor Maynard.
Yeah, just as an observation, I think that's a very good point by Councillor Barber. One way round that would obviously be if in future the different sections were represented by different patterns rather than different colours. If they're represented by different patterns, then the patterns would reproduce in black and white. Because, I mean, this is actually one where if you were looking at it online as a resident, you would have the colour version. So you'd have an advantage over those of us who are sat here with the grey version, which, as Councillor Barber very correctly says, is pretty much impossible to interpret.
That might test your Excel skills, Mr. Houghton, but... No, is it not going to work? No. Councillor Barber, you're able to see some coloured versions now. I know that's a lot to look through in a very short order, but hopefully it's more helpful than what you had in front of you to start with.
It's extremely more informative. Thank you very much, and thank you to Councillor Gerard. So a couple of things. I mean, first of all, I will be voting against this because I oppose the premise on which this whole trial is based, which is getting rid of weekly residual waste collection. I do not believe that there is a wish for that from the Brentwood population. I believe that most of them see it as the core service that they really value, that they actually think we do reasonably well. And I think that we should be looking at other services like encouraging recycling in other ways, which doesn't always necessarily mean that you need to force them to go do fortnightly collections. So, I mean, the question, do you use the food recycling bin provided to you? I don't know about the people that said they never do. That is an optional service. We need to encourage them and inform them, I agree. But if you look at, do you use your new wheeled black bin? 4.6% of your sample said they don't. And you're, I believe, implementing a pilot where you, if it's not in the official black bin, you don't take it. So, and I see comments like they go down the dump in the feedback from the 100 people, I think it was roughly, approximately, from the 500 who actually are in the area being the pilot area. So you've only got a statistically very small sample of people, 100, and some of them are telling you they're not using the bin at all, and therefore, goodness knows where their waste goes. That's the first question. You haven't also communicated to the people that you will refuse to collect anything which is in excess of the bin. So you can do it during particular times of the year, and someone leaves the bin with a lid sticking up. This council has not said whether it plans to fine the people. It has not said whether it's going to leave a black bag on the ground and just take the residual waste from the top of the lid down. So many questions, and I'm not sure how anyone can actually express a preference for a pilot if they don't know the rules of engagement. If they get a few fines, if we implement it that way to encourage them to recycle, presumably they won't be so keen on the option. But I don't see the traction here. I do think that there is an argument to be made to say that Tide bags would reduce in less litter being dropped down the road by the operatives collecting the recycle bags. I do think there's a fair discussion about that because we know most of the litter tends to drop on the floor when it's transferred into another receptacle. But even the question number 7, do you prefer using the new blue and white recycling sacks? 43% said no, and 41% said yes. So you haven't convinced the people in this pilot that the bags are better. So I'm really trying to I mean, if you look at how full is your black bin on collection day, and 22% said more than full. I mean, okay, let's be honest with you. Voting for this item here will be seen as an endorsement of this pilot process, and therefore I will be voting against. Thank you for doing the consultation. I value that, and I value both the Chair and the Vice Chair and the officers for organising that information to be in front of us tonight. But I just don't think that you've got the engagement of the people of Brentwood on this, and perhaps it's the consultation's proven its point, but I think you need to think again. Look at widening the number of items that we recycle as a council. Look at the recycling that we do in flats and apartments, which at the moment we encourage everyone to put everything into a black bag. But I don't think you've got people saying they want to go fortnightly. I genuinely don't read that from the statistics in front of us here today. And I think you should really think again on that proposal, and I'll be voting against this item for that reason. Thank you.
Councillor Fulcher.
I think the recommendation states it's an extension. We're extending it, and we can look at those figures. We can look at every single thing that you've raised, Councillor Barber, and I've no doubt will. So I think the very important thing is recycling rates are much, much better.
Thank you very much. Councillor Minor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think we always need to be very careful when we're making decisions with items that come to any committee, what we're actually being asked to do in terms of the items that's coming in front of us. I mean, what we've got here is a report back on the pilot as it's been so far. We're noting that there's been a 10% increase in recycling rates, which is positive. We're also noting the outcomes of the residents' engagement survey. We're being asked to agree that the scheme, the pilot scheme, when it's just a pilot scheme, is extended for an additional 2 months. And then we're also being asked to agree that a borough-wide consultation is undertaken, seeking the views of residents on a range of potential changes to the waste collection service. Now that last part, R3, is that's, I can see how that's, okay, there's an R4 as well. Then there's a fully costed business case outlining potential change to the Waste Collection Service. But there's a step with all of this where the fully costed business case is something that goes alongside the information that we've got and the information that we'd be getting in terms of the feedback from the borough residents. And the potentially controversial elements, we're not actually deciding at this point. If a resident was listening to what Councillor Barber's just said, they would think that we were being asked to agree to scrapping a fortnightly bin collection. We're not doing that. That's not what's in front of us tonight. There's the possibility in the future that we could get to that. But that's not what R1, 2, R3 or R4 are asking tonight. A fully costed business case, you need to look at what the outcome of that costing is. You need to look at the business case. A borough-wide consultation, you need to find out what the results of the consultation are. Yes, there are positives and negatives, and obviously because of the grey version of the printed report, it's a little bit tricky, and you have to try and work it out and think about it quickly. But these things need weighing up, and at the end of the weighing up process, you then get a decision. You're being asked for a decision. We're not being asked for the decision that Councillor Barber was suggesting we were being asked for tonight. As far as I'm concerned, I'm happy to welcome the 10% increase in recycling rates. I'm happy to note the outcomes of the residents' engagement survey. I'm happy for a borough-wide consultation seeking the views of residents to take place. Why would I not want to know what the views of residents are? And I'm happy that a fully costed business case is worked out. Why would I not be keen for there to be a fully costed business case? These are sensible steps going through a process in an appropriate way. And when we get to other decisions on the back of those steps, we have to make decisions then about those things. I don't think it helps anybody to suggest that when decisions aren't actually being made, and that's not what we're actually voting on, to somehow say that is what we're voting on. If that is not what we're voting on tonight.
Sorry, I was named not just once, twice. If I may just come back to Councillor Minot. Let's be absolutely clear. The reason that this is being delayed is because the administration wishes to defer the decision-making over going to fortnightly black bags till after the local elections in May. That is the reason. It's to kick the can down the road and to delay the decision-making. And we will stand for weekly black bags on this side of the chamber. And that's the reason, I believe, that we're being asked to extend this trial by 2 months.
Let's go back to when we first debated having this trial. We said we wanted a 6-month trial and that we would take a rain check after 4 months, and at that period we would consult residents. That is exactly what we've done. We always said the preference was to run a 6-month trial. This is nothing to do with timing of elections or anything like that. The preference always was for a full 6-month trial, unless there was some overwhelming reason to call a halt to it, because operationally it wasn't working or the feedback from residents was excessively negative. Neither of those factors apply. So all we are saying is we want to run the trial for the full 6 months that we always intended. Councillor Gorton.
Sorry, Chair, could I just come in with a very quick point of information? We've just heard the phrase, I think I'm correct in reporting this, the decision that has been made to go to something other than the fortnightly back bin collection. Where is the decision? That decision has not been made. That's not what we're deciding tonight. We're not deciding that tonight. We're not actually in this report being asked to decide that. That decision has not been made. Fact.
All right, Councillor Gorton.
Thank you, Chair. When I used to work for GlaxoSmithKline, we had a head of department who would always ask, show me the data. And as far as I'm concerned, it's data that we need. So that's why I fully support extending this pilot for another 2 months to generate more data. Looking at the graph on page 70. It is encouraging. The recycling rate overall has increased quite significantly. I'm disappointed that the food waste recycling hasn't increased. But overall, the trends look good. I do have some issues with this trial. But I'm very pleased to see from the supplementary agenda, the pie charts, page 9, that 95% of people are using the new blue and white bags. And it's also clear from page 11, I think it is, that there's very little, it's 41 versus 43% prefer, let's get this right.
45 and 47.
No.
41 and 43%, yeah.
43% don't prefer the new blue and white sacks. 41% do prefer them. That's not significant. Page 12, I find this pie chart slightly worrying because it shows that 23% are saying they're black bins, the residual waste, more than full. Quite how that's achieved, I don't know, because I believe you're not collecting over full bins. Maybe people are just pushing the rubbish down further. So if, and this is a big, big if, nothing's been decided yet, if a wider scheme were to be rolled out, I would very much like to see residents given the choice up front of having a 180 litre black bin or a 240 litre black bin, rather than the default being 180. Just so that we don't have this problem of them overfilling the black bin. Thank you.
I believe I have to move a suspension of standing orders as we're coming up to 9 o'clock. Is that seconded and agreed? Who's next?
Me.
Oh, Councillor Jones.
So just coming back on a couple of items, according to my maths, which may not be completely accurate, I think we've had a 20% return in questionnaires, which I think is probably quite a good response. It would be great if we got more. The figures from the recycling centre don't seem to suggest that there has been an increase in waste being sent to the centre. So I know quite a lot of the responses seem to indicate that they were taking their waste to the recycling. Obviously, I can't prove or deny that, but the amounts gathered and the number of visits didn't seem to suggest that was happening. So my perspective, I would like to see this trial continue. We have a week's worth of Tetra Pak recycling waste that will go into this trial. I know it's not a particularly long period of time, but I think, again, it would be significant to see how much change that makes to our recycling.
Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Still not a member of the committee, but I do appreciate the opportunity to speak. Before I start, can I clearly state that we all have an obligation to do more for the environment? Turning to the pilot, can I ask, what does success look like? You know, I'm from an industry, likewise the pharmaceutical industry, that's very numbers focused. You know, targets have to be clear, easy to measure, and we can decide what success or failure looks like. So the first question is really, you talk about recycling rates. How is those numbers actually calculated? Is it a percentage of, you know, if you've got 10 kilos of recycling material each week, you know, how much of that goes in? Or is it as a percentage of the total waste? So black bags, et cetera, plus recycling. So I think, you know, I'd like somebody to be clear on the actual how that number is calculated. Because the second point is, you know, looking at the direction of travel, I would expect to see total percentage of all rubbish recycling to go down. And the reason I say that is if you walk into any supermarket, they have large signs promising to reduce packaging by 50% over the next 5 years. Now, that is clearly an excellent progress. However, of course, if there's less packaging being produced, there will be less to recycle. So as a percentage of the total, I would expect that to actually go down. And likewise, you know, if people are putting out fewer black bags, you know, again, percentage of recycling will be going up, but there won't actually be any more recycling. And on the subject of residents, you know, I have been contacted by a number of people who've got wind of this this pilot. The entire lot are 100% against it. They have lived in areas elsewhere, Kent, other parts of the UK, where they've moved to fortnightly black bin collection, and their experience is, you know, wholly inadequate and poor. And likewise, you know, the recycling rate's going up fantastic, but also like to see, you know, has there been an increase in fly tipping? Because if there has, I'd you know, dismiss this as an abject failure. Thank you.
Councillor Pound, I think you indicated.
Do
you want to come back? And I'm just going to collect the. Yeah, come back on the questions.
Right.
Yeah, no, go on.
I just think the recycling when we get lost in it. So the percentage of recycling, it's the total amount of waste collected. So it's all waste streams. So that'll be your glass, food, paper card, plastics, and your black sack waste. And you would take then, that's your total base figure, and then basically over the top of that, it will be the all the recycling collected divided by that times by 100. So you'll get your percentage that way. So nationally, yes, that's correct. So there has been, and I think with sort of extended producer responsibilities that are coming in, and it's been, you know, coming for 2 or 3 years now. Certainly, many companies are making thinner packaging, so you know, so the weights have come down. However, you know, Brentwood Steel's recycling rate is still low in comparison to others within Essex. So there is still quite a marked difference. You know, in a good. I think the next highest one is around about 45%, interesting enough. So I think we're quite a way below. So it's more than just the weights. So there's a general trend coming down, but I think, you know, there is a definite sort of a marked difference in Brentwood's recycling performance.
Councillor Pound.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, another member of the committee. Yes, I mean, I'm very concerned that this is leading us towards a fortnightly bin collection. It's going to be enormously unpopular with our residents. I'm asked so many times, well, we pay our council tax, what do we get for it? And I say, well, you have your streets swept and you have your bins collected. I don't relish telling them we're going to put up the council tax, but we won't be collecting your bins so often. I'm also very concerned about this study that we've had. I think we were told that the idea was that if people didn't put so much into their black sacks, then recycling would increase. We've held a sort of survey over October, November, December, when everybody was having parties, putting bottles out into their red boxes, and the Amazon vans never stopped coming with all the parcels. So obviously recycling was going to go up during that period of time. So I'm not sure that this is an indication of the fact that, you know, if you go to fortnightly collection, then obviously recycling will increase. I feel as well that we didn't do enough if we were so concerned about recycling numbers. to actually try to increase this prior to this idea. We hadn't been, I mean, going back over years, we found that you had to regularly reinforce with residents, don't forget, you know, this is what you should be doing, we need the recycling, it costs us money, etc., etc. We didn't seem to be doing that reinforcement. I think the white and black sacks are enormously unpopular. I find them, especially the blue paper bag, I can't actually lift it and get it out the house, put it up. Because I'm a councillor and I do it in stages, but somebody else will say, oh, blow this and put it all in the black bags. So I don't think we've gone along other routes before we seem to be jumping to this very extreme idea.
Councillor Patel, as a member of the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick couple of things, really. R3 on recommendation, where it says borough-wide consultation will take place. Now, only last week, the administration have increased the council tax. I know it's 3.99% or whatever, but it increased. And suddenly, after a few months, you're going to go back to the residents and going to do a consultation and ask them to cut the services. I'm not sure how well this is going to go down with the residents. So yeah, I think to my mind, I don't think I can support this. The other thing I would possibly mention is again about the pilot scheme. With even pilot scheme, I'm not sure whether the residents that are actually involved with this pilot scheme at the moment has been consulted before the pilot scheme started. I don't think. Is that consulted? Yes? No? Sorry.
So you ask, were they consulted before the pilot scheme commenced?
Yes.
No. So they were selected, and you know, so for a pilot scheme, there isn't necessarily the same level of consultation. But for significant change, you'd be expected.
Okay. Sorry. Can I? Yes. Yeah. So basically, I'm going to stick with that R3 there. I don't think it's you know, increasing council tax, cutting services. I don't think it's going to go down very well, and I don't think I have courage to go back to my residents and say, okay, look, we can ask for more money, but you know, we can't provide you the services. Sorry.
Need anybody to
Yes.
pass out?
Yes, I think that's the point. And also, can I request a recorded vote, please?
Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. Just a number of points. On page 1, recommendation 1, it says the committee notes there's been an approximate 10% increase in recycling rates. Can I ask, is that solely in Ingatestone, or if that's actually borough-wide? Page 3, regarding the enforcement, what's actually happened? So with the side waste, and if the bins are not closed, so the crocodile mouth, what's actually happened? Have we actually collected the rubbish, or have we gone back to collect the rubbish? And if we have gone back, what the cost to the depot was for obviously going back to collect that rubbish? And if we have enforced, and the cost of the enforcement, page 5, so with the views of the residents, it's 108. I'm assuming that's 108 out of 500. So 108 responses. I'm assuming that's 108 out of 500. If that's correct, what we can do to obviously just to increase the number of responses going forward. And it states that in terms of changes to behaviour, only 21.5% believe that the trial had helped reduce the amount of waste or recycle more. So if my math is correct, that would say that 78.5% did not. So touching on Councillor Fulcher's point, these are the outcomes of the residents. So I do think that we need to actually look into as to why it would appear 78.5% feel that this has not helped. Touching on Councillor Gordon's point, I'm seeing it with my own shopping, the commitment from the retailers on the reduction of plastic packaging, and surely that would actually then decrease the amount of plastic figures should be recycled and increase cardboard, because it's things, items such as chewing gum, they're now in cardboard containers as opposed to plastic. Detergent are now in cardboard, and actually much smaller cardboard. So actually, you could actually even strongly argue there should be a reduction in the weight of cardboard now. And then also just touching on Councillor Gordon's point about the data. This council declared a climate emergency in June 23, and that was our commitment to addressing possibly one of the most pressing challenges of our day, and to actually action on a local level. There's been a number of items tonight, including this item, which is impacting our climate emergency. So could we actually have a report on the impact of these items on the climate emergency? And last point, soft plastics, surely that would increase our recycling figures. Can we not bring that in sooner rather than later?
So that I get the officers to answer some of those questions, and one that we didn't pick up earlier on was Councillor Barber's one about how we communicated the requirements, and that also dovetails with the one that Councillor Slade was just asking about, how we've managed people who have had overflowing bins or side waste.
I'll pick some of those up, please, Chair. So the start with Councillor Slade's point, the 10% increase in recycling was just in the trial area. Side waste and enforcement. We was in the first week of the trial, we would think there was a slightly raised amount of waste in the bin, we would have took it. As the trial progressed, we restricted that down. There was no formal enforcement as such. The 20% saying that, yeah, you said there's 20% said it's helped them too. So I guess it's what way we want to read the figures. You could say 20% is good because it's a 20% increase. You could look at it the other way and say it's not so good. Soft plastics, as we've said earlier in the committee, it's legislated that they'll be included in collections from April 2027. Have I missed anything?
I think I'll just pick up on the last point on soft plastics. I think once the MRF are able to take them, then we'll promote it. I think this is where national legislation does help in terms of triggering demand. So once you say you have to recycle a certain type of material, then all the plants have to gear up for doing so, and they are doing so. But in terms of its economic value, I think it's quite marginal. So until their arm is twisted, they're not going to have these facilities ready. But if they are ready earlier, then of course we'll promote it earlier.
Thank you very much. Well, very, very quickly.
Just to say the 78%, I'm not looking at that negatively, it's what we can learn from it. So that's what I wanted to clarify. I'm not making that as a negative point, but I just think there's an awful lot of data there that we can actually learn from.
Well, then that's one of the points of continuing the trial, is because we want a richer pool of data so that we can make some of those decisions. I just want to pick up some of the points that have been made. The premise for this trial is not to see if we can get rid of weekly residual waste collection. The premise of this trial is to tackle our appalling recycling rates. We are the worst in Essex. We are almost in the bottom decile for the whole country of comparable local authorities. We're at 34%. The top 10 local authorities in the country are all over 60%. Top of the league is St Albans at 64.2%. I actually don't believe that St Albans is a greatly different area from Brentwood, made up of a big town in the middle and rural areas, some small towns on the outside. They're nearly double what we achieve here. So we have a problem, and that's what we're trying to address. The premise is addressing our appalling recycling rates. Now, we know looking at all of those top 10 collect residual waste either fortnightly or 3 weekly. So we know that an element that works is shifting residual waste collection from weekly to fortnightly. That's why we've trialled it, because we want to see whether that works here in Brentwood. And we picked an area that was representative in terms of recycling rates in order to run the trial. And the results are very encouraging. We're up in the mid-40s already. Maybe in another 2 months we can push it towards 50%. That seems to me to be where we want to be as a borough. Not at the bottom of the league table. I want Brentwood to be bottom of anything. I want us to be top. We're nowhere near that. We're in the relegation zone. We want to get out of it. So the premise is improving recycling rates, number one. It is not a cut in service in any way. Over a fortnight, we're collecting exactly the same amount of waste as we collect at the moment. That's not a cut in service. That's just a different combination of waste collection, not a cut in service. To characterise it as that is hugely misleading. Now, I've spoken to groups in Ingatestone, I've spoken to groups around the borough, and when you start from the premise of what are we going to do about our recycling rates, and that this is an attempt to address that, I have found nothing but enthusiastic support. And I'm not making that up. I'm not making that up. People, when you explain what we're doing and why we're doing it, people want to support it. They want to do better. They want to do better for the environment. They want Brentwood to be something, to have something to be proud of in terms of how it's tackling recycling. And some people have picked up the point about the 50-50 sort of split there is between those that like the reusable recycling bags and those that like the single-use ones. It has never been about convincing people to use one or the other. We wanted to see what worked and what people preferred. We debated a number of options. One of the other options, adopted by many local authorities, is to give people separate bins, wheeled bins for different recycling streams. We considered that, but we thought that might be a change too many for the trial for us to get some meaningful data and results out of it. And we have done things to help try and raise recycling rates. In 2024, we participated in Essex County Council's drive to get up food recycling. We delivered food recycling bags to everyone. And as you can see, it didn't move the dial by itself. It didn't move the dial, so we've had to go. We had to try something different. We couldn't just sit back and say, oh, it's okay, we've had to go, it didn't work. We haven't got any other ideas. We have got ideas, and they're ideas about making Brentwood one of the best in Essex, not one of the worst. So, and look, trends, I accept everything people have said about wider trends in the way supermarkets are packaging, not packaging. I mean, they still produce some terrible packaging in my book. Plastic stuck inside cardboard. I mean, how is that meant to encourage people to recycle? What the hell do you do with that? Yeah, and I mean, some of the stuff that goes, the food that goes into the black bags, the composition analysis we've had done, it's going straight from the fridge. These wretched buy one, get one free offers encourage people to buy more food than they need, and they end up throwing it away. So the supermarkets, frankly, in my book, are in a bad place. There's a lot more they could do, and they must do, and they must step up to the plate. So I just wanted to pick out something, but yeah, I just want to get this message across. This is not about a cut in service. It's not about saying the aim is to reduce the residual waste collection from weekly to fortnightly. That by itself is not the purpose. The purpose is to get our recycling rates up. So I'm now going to put the recommendations to the vote. You've got them in front of you. Coming to that, I've forgotten that, don't worry. Yeah, I put the recommendations to the vote, and it's a recorded vote.
Please can members indicate for, against or abstain when the name is called. Councillor Worsfold.
For.
Councillor Gerard.
For.
Councillor Barber. Councillor Fulcher. Councillor Gibson. Councillor Gorton. Councillor McShane. Councillor Minor. And Councillor Patel. Thank you, members. That's carried, Chair.
Okay, that's carried. I believe that is the completion of our agenda for this evening. Thank you very much. It's been a long meeting, a lot of very constructive debate, and I thank all the non-members of the committee who came for their contributions too.